Alexander Dumas Jr. says, "The difference between genius and stupidity is genius has its limits." فهنا دوما الكاتب الفرنسي بيقول الفرق بين العبقرية والغباء إن العبقرية ليها حدود. طبعا هو هنا بيهزر، يعني عايز يقول إن الغباء يعتبر ملوش حدود خالص يعني، وأنا أتفق يعني. I must go to the mountains to find peace. Carry peace within, and even a marketplace becomes a monastery. يعني ايه بقى؟ في ناس تعتقد ان هي هتلاقي السلام الداخلي فوق جبل مثلا، فهنا الراجل بيقوله ان انت السلام ده جواك. حتى لو انت كنت في السوق بالنسبة لك هيكون زيه زي المعبد او المكان المقدس يعني. I must go to the mountains to find peace. Carry peace within, and even a marketplace becomes a monastery. مارك توين الكاتب الإنجليزي الساخر بيقول إيه بقى؟ Buy land, they are not making it anymore. فهو هنا بيقولك اشتري قطعة أرض يعني، إن هما بطلوا يعملوا قطع أرض يعني في الكوكب. هو نفس الكوكب من فترة طويلة يعني. Buy land, they are not making it anymore. عددها محدود يعني، فأكيد الطلب عليها كتير. ده مارك توين بيحب يهزر كده هو دايما. Oscar Wilde says, "Every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future." يعني ايه؟ يعني كل قديس، كل شخص يعني ايه يتضح للناس ان هو ما بيغلطش، له ماضي. Every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. وكل شخص بيخطئ، كل آثم sinner has a future، له مستقبل. كل قديس له ماضي وكل آثم له مستقبل. فهنا طبعا جملة برضو عميقة بتقولك إن مش معنى إن أنت قديس إن أنت ما عملتش أخطاء قبل كده، ومش معنى إن أنت بتغلط دلوقتي إن أنت هتفضل تغلط في المستقبل. الأشياء متغيرة يعني، ودايما في أمل. Every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. Sun Tzu is saying, "Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat." يعني الخطط طويلة المدى اللي هي الاستراتيجيات من غير tactics دي عادة بتكون الحاجات التفاصيل الصغيرة. is the slowest route to victory. هو أبطأ طريق للنصر. Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. الاستراتيجيات بدون التكتيكات هي أقصر أو أبطأ أبطأ طريق إلى النصر. Tactics without strategy، والتكتيك بقى التفاصيل بدون الاستراتيجية الكبيرة is the noise before defeat. اللي بيعتمد على التكتيكس فقط بدون خطة كبيرة دي الضوضاء قبل الهزيمة. noise before defeat. يبقى strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. يبقى لازم يكون ليك strategy كبيرة، خطة طويلة، هدف كبير، وأهداف صغيرة tactics تفاصيل صغيرة. ازاي هعمل الخطوات عشان أوصل للهدف الكبير أو الحاجة الكبيرة. A fool thinks himself to be wise, but a wise man knows himself to be a fool. A fool thinks himself to be wise. دايما الشخص الغبي يعتقد إنه هو شخص حكيم. But a wise man، الرجل الحكيم، knows himself to be a fool. عادة ما يرى نفسه كشخص ليس حكيم، شخص غبي. بتحصل. Don't be pushed by your problems. Be led by your dreams. لا تتأثر بمشاكلك، خليك ماشي بأحلامك. Don't be pushed by your problems. Be led by your dreams. هنا بيقول only a fool learns from his own mistake. فقط الشخص الغبي يتعلم من أخطائه. The wise man الرجل الحكيم learns from the mistake of others. يتعلم من أخطاء الآخرين. Only a fool learns from his own mistake. The wise man learns from the mistake of others. Only a fool learns from his own mistake. The wise man learns from the mistake of others. فرانز كافكا يقول ايه بقى فرانز كافكا؟ I was ashamed of myself when I realized life was a costume party and I attended with my real face. I was ashamed of myself when I realized أنا كنت أشعر بالخجل من نفسي لما عرفت. I was ashamed of myself when I realized life was a costume party. إن الحياة كانت حفلة تنكرية. And I attended with my real face. وأنا حضرت بوجهي الحقيقي. I was ashamed of myself when I realized أنا كنت أستحي من نفسي لما أدركت أن الحياة كانت حفلة تنكرية وأنا حضرت بوجهي الحقيقي. I was ashamed of myself when I realized life was a costume party. Life was a costume party and I attended with my real face. Dr. House said, we all make mistakes and we all pay a price. كلنا يخطئ وكلنا يدفع الثمن. كل واحد مننا بيغلط وكل واحد بيدفع ثمن أخطائه. لا استثناءات. To avoid losing a piece, many players have lost the game. الكثير من أجل ألا يخسروا قطعة يخسروا الجيم كله. ناس كتير بتخاف تخسر قطعة فبيخسروا الجيم كله، مش عايزين يضحوا بولا قطعة. هنا الهدف ايه؟ هنا الهدف to avoid losing a piece many players have lost the game. من أجل ألا يخسروا قطعة واحدة الكثير من اللاعبين يخسرون الدور كله، دور الشطرنج كله، اللعبة كلها. هنا بيتكلم على فكرة إن لازم يكون فيه تضحيات، مينفعش تكسب كل حاجة بدون ولا تضحية. To avoid losing a piece من أجل تفادي خسارة قطع الكثير من اللاعبين خسروا المباراة، خسروا اللعب. To avoid losing a piece many players have lost the game. Sometimes the best move is waiting. Sometimes the best move is waiting. أحيانا في بعض الأوقات أفضل خطوة هي الانتظار. أفضل حركة هي الانتظار. Sometimes the best move is waiting. sometimes the best move is waiting. في بعض الأوقات أفضل حركة هي الانتظار. يبقى نراجع عليهم تاني. The difference between genius and stupidity is genius has its limits. The difference between genius and stupidity is genius has its limits. الفرق بين العبقرية والغباء هو أن العبقرية لها حدود. I must go to the mountains to find peace. I must go to the mountains to find peace. Carry peace within, and even a marketplace becomes a monastery. أنا لازم أروح للجبال حتى أجد السلام. Carry peace within. خلي السلام بداخلك. And even a marketplace becomes a monastery. وحتى السوق حتى الأسواق ستصبح مكان هادئ بالنسبة لك. Buy land. They are not making it anymore. Buy land. They are not making it anymore. He is joking. He wants to say invest in buying a land because it's very limited. Every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. Every saint has a past. Every saint made mistakes in the past. And every sinner, everyone who does mistakes, everyone who make sins, who do sins, has a future. He might stop at any moment. His future, the sinner right now might be a saint in the future. And the saint right now, maybe he was a sinner in the past. Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. الاستراتيجية بدون التكتيكات هي أبطأ طريق للنصر. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. التفاصيل بدون استراتيجية كبيرة هي مجرد ضوضاء قبل الهزيمة. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. A fool thinks himself to be wise, but a wise man knows himself to be a fool. الشخص الغبي يعتقد دائما أنه شخص حكيم، ولكن الشخص الحكيم يعرف نفسه دائما كشخص غبي. A fool thinks himself to be wise, but a wise man knows himself to be a fool. Don't be pushed by your problems. Be led by your dreams. Don't be pushed by your problems. لا تتأثر، لا تتحرك من خلال مشاكلك. اجعل أحلامك تقودك. Be led by your dreams. Only a fool learns from his own mistake. The wise man learns from the mistake of others. فقط الشخص الغبي هو من يتعلم من أخطائه. الشخص الحكيم يتعلم من أخطاء الآخرين. I was ashamed of myself when I realized Life was a costume party. I was ashamed of myself when I realized life was a costume party, and I attended with my real face. We all make mistakes, and we all pay a price. We all make mistakes, and we all pay a price. To avoid losing a piece, many players have lost the game. To avoid losing one piece, many players have lost the whole game. Sometimes the best move is waiting. Sometimes the best move is waiting. Now let's read before sleeping. A portrait like this would set you far above all the young men in England and make the old men quite jealous. If old men are ever capable of any emotion, I know you will laugh at me, he replied, but I really can exhibit it. I have put too much of myself into it. Lord Henry stretched his long legs out on the divan and shook with laughter. Yes, I knew you would laugh, but it is quite true, all the same. Too much of yourself in it. Upon my word, Basil, I didn't know you were so vain, and I really can't see any resemblance between you with your rugged, strong face and your coal black hair, and this young Adonis, who looks as if he was made of ivory and rose leaves. Why, my dear Basil, he is a Narcissus, and you, well, of course you have an intellectual expression and all that. But beauty, real beauty, ends where an intellectual expression begins. Intellect is in itself an exaggeration and destroys the harmony of any face. The moment one sits down to think, one becomes all nose, or all forehead, or something horrid. Look at the successful men in any of the learned professions, how perfectly hideous they are. Except, of course, in the church. But then, in the church, they don't think. A bishop keeps on saying at the age of 80 what he was told to say when he was a boy at the age of 18, and consequently, he always looks absolutely delightful. Your mysterious young friend, whose name you have never told me, but whose picture really fascinates me, never thinks. I feel quite sure of that. He is a brainless, beautiful thing, who should be always here in winter when we have no flowers to look at, and always here in summer when we want something to chill our intelligence. Don't flatter yourself, Basil, you are not in the least like him. You don't understand me, Harry. Of course I'm not like him. I know that perfectly well. Indeed, I should be sorry to look like him. You shrug your shoulders. I'm telling you the truth. There is a fatality about all physical and intellectual distinction. The sort of fatality that seems to dog through history the faltering steps of kings. It's better not to be different from one's fellows. The ugly and the stupid have the best of it in this world. They can sit quietly and gape at the play. If they know nothing of victory, they are at least spared the knowledge of defeat. They live as we all should live, undisturbed, indifferent, and without disquiet. They neither bring ruin upon other nor ever receive it from alien hands. Your rank and wealth, Harry, my brains, such as they are, my fame, whatever it may be worth, Dorian Gray's good looks, we will all suffer for what the gods have given us, suffer terribly. Dorian Gray, is that his name? Dorian Gray, is that his name? Lord Henry, walking across the studio towards Basil Hallward. Yes, that's his name. I didn't intend to tell it to you. But why not? Oh, I can't explain. When I like people immensely, I never tell their names to anyone. It seems like surrendering a part of them. You know how I love secrecy? It is the only thing that can make modern life wonderful or mysterious to us. The commonest thing is delightful if one only hides it. When I leave town, I never tell my people where I'm going. If I did, I would lose all my pleasure. It is a silly habit, I dare say, but somehow it seems to bring a great deal of romance into one's life. I suppose you think me awfully foolish about it. Not at all, answered Lord Henry, laying his hand upon his shoulder. Not at all, my dear Basil. You seem to forget that I'm married, and the one charm of marriage is that it makes a life of deception necessary for both parties. I never know where my wife is, and my wife never knows what I am doing. When we meet, we do meet occasionally. When we dine out together or go down to the Duke's, we tell each other the most absurd stories with the most serious faces. My wife is very good at it. Much better, in fact, than I am. She never gets confused over her dates, and I always do. But when she does find me out, she makes no row at all. I sometimes wish she would, but she merely laughs at me. I hate the way you talk about your married life, Harry, and said Basil Hallward, shaking his hands off and strolling towards the door that led into the garden. I believe that you are really a very good husband, but that you are thoroughly ashamed of your own virtues. You are an extraordinary fellow. You never say a moral thing, and you never do a wrong thing. Your cynicism is simply a pose. Being natural is simply a pose, and the most irritating pose I know, cried Lord Henry, laughing, and the two young men went out into the garden together, and for a time they did not speak. After a long pause, Lord Henry pulled out his watch. I'm afraid I must be going. Basil, he murmured, and before I go, I insist on your answering a question I put to you some time ago. What is that? Asked Basil Hallward, keeping his eyes fixed on the ground. You know quite well. I do not, Harry. Well, I will tell you what it is. Please don't. I must. I want you to explain to me why you won't exhibit Dorian Gray's picture. I want the real reason. No, you did not. You said it was because there was too much of yourself in it. Now that is childish. Harry, said Basil Hallward, looking him straight in the face. Every portrait that's painted with with feelings is a portrait of the artist, not of either. Not of the sitter. The sitter is merely the accident, the occasion. It's not he who is revealed by the painter, it's rather the painter who, on the colored canvas, reveals himself. The reason I will not exhibit this picture is that I'm afraid that I have shown with it the secret of my own soul. Lord Larry laughed. And what is that? He asked. I'll tell you, said Hallward, and an expression of perplexity came over his face. I'm all exceptions, Basil, murmured his companion, looking at him. Oh, there is really very little to tell, Harry, answered the young painter, and I'm afraid you will hardly understand it. Perhaps you will hardly believe it. Lord Henry smiled and, leaning down, plucked a pink-petaled daisy from the grass and examined it. I'm quite sure I shall understand it, he replied, gazing intently at the little golden white feathered disc. And I can believe anything, provided that is incredible. The wind shook some blossoms from the trees, and the heavy lilac blossoms, with their clustering stars, moved to and fro in the languid air. A grasshopper began to chirrup in the grass, and a long thin dragonfly floated by on its brown gauze wings. Lord Henry felt as if he could hear Basil Hallward's heart beating, and he wondered what was coming. Well, this is incredible, repeated Hallward, rather bitterly. Incredible to me at times. I don't know what it means. The story is simply this. 2 months ago, I went to a crush at Lady Brandon's. You know, we poor painters have to show ourselves in society from time to time, just to remind the public that we are not savages. With an evening coat and a white tie, as you told me once, anybody, even a stockbroker, can gain a reputation for being civilized. Well, after I had been in the room about 10 minutes, talking to huge overdressed dowagers and tedious academicians, I suddenly became conscious that someone was looking at me. I turned halfway round and saw Dorian Gray for the first time. When our eyes met, I felt that I was growing pale. A curious instinct of terror came over me. I knew that I had come face to face with someone whose mere personality was so fascinating that if I allowed it to do so, it would absorb my whole nature, my whole soul, my very art itself. I did not want any external influence in my life. You know yourself, Harry, how independent I am by nature. My father destined me for the army. I insisted on going to Oxford. Then he made me enter my name at the Middle Temple. Before I had eaten half a dozen dinners, I gave up the bar and announced my intention of becoming a painter. I have always been my own master, had at least always been so till I met Dorian Gray. Then, but I don't know how to explain it to you, something seemed to tell me that I was on the verge of a terrible crisis in my life. I had a strange feeling that fate had in store for me exquisite joys and exquisite sorrows. I knew that if I spoke to Dorian I would become absolutely devoted to him, and that I ought not to speak to him. I grew afraid, and turned to quiet the room, and turned to quit the room. I was not conscious that made me to do so. It was cowardice. I take no credit to myself for trying to escape. Conscious and cowardice are really the same things, Basil. Conscious is the trade name of the firm. That's all. I don't believe that, Harry. However, whatever was my motive, and it may have been pride, for I used to be very proud. I certainly struggled to the door. There, of course, I stumbled against Lady Brandon. You are not going to run away so soon, Mr. Hallward. She screamed out. You know, her shrill, horrid voice. Yes, she is a peacock in everything but beauty, said Lord Henry, pulling the daisy to bits with his long, nervous fingers. I could not get rid of her. She brought me up to royalties, and people with stars and garters, and elderly ladies with gigantic tiaras and hooked noses. She spoke of me as She spoke of me as her dearest friend. I had only met her once before, but she took it into her head to lionize me. I believe some picture of mine had made a great success at the time, at least had been chattered about in the penny newspapers, which is the 19th century standard of immortality. Suddenly I found myself face to face with the young man whose personality had so strangely stirred me. We were quite close, almost touching. Our eyes met again. I, it was mad of me. But I asked Lady Brandon to introduce me to him. Perhaps it was not so mad after all. It was simply inevitable. We would have spoken to each other without any introduction. I am sure of that. Dorian told me so afterwards. He, too, felt that we were destined to know each other. And how did Lady Brandon describe this wonderful young man? I know she goes in for giving a rapid precis of all her guests. I remember her bringing me up to a most truculent and red-faced old gentleman covered all with orders and ribbons, and hissing into my ear in a tragic whisper, which must have been perfectly audible to everybody in the room. Something like, Sir Humpty Dumpty, you know, Afghan frontier, Russian intrigue, very successful man, wife killed by an elephant, quite inconsolable, wants to marry a beautiful American widow. Everybody who does nowadays. Hates Mr. Gladstone, but very much interested in Beatles. Asked him what he thinks of Shuvalov. I simply fled. I like to find out people for myself, but poor Lady Brandon treats her guests exactly as an auctioneer treats his goods. She either explains them entirely away or tells one everything about them except what one wants to know. But what did she say about Mr. Dorian Gray? Oh, she murmured, charming boy, poor dear mother, and a quite inseparable. Engaged to be married to the same man, I mean married on the same day. No, how very silly of me. Quite forget what he does. Afraid he doesn't do anything. Oh yes, plays the piano. Or is it the violin, dear Mr. Gray? We could neither of us help laughing, and we became friends at once. Laughter is not a bad beginning for a friendship, and it is the best ending for one, said Lord Henry, plucking another daisy. Hallward buried his face in his hands. You don't understand what friendship is, Harry, he murmured, or what enmity is, for that matter. You like everyone, that's to say, you are indifferent to everyone. How horribly unjust of you, cried Lord Henry, tilting his hat back and looking up at at the little clouds that were drifting across the hollow turquoise of the summer sky, like ravelled skeins of glossy white silk. Yes, horribly unjust of you. I make a great difference between people. I choose my friends for their good looks, my acquaintances for their characters, and my enemies for their brains. A man can't be too careful in the choice of his enemies. I have not got one who is a fool. They are all men of some intellectual power, and consequently they all appreciate me. Is that very vain of me? I think it's rather vain. I should think it was, Harry, but according to your category I must be merely an acquaintance. My dear old Basil, you are much more than an acquaintance. And much less than a friend. A sort of brother, I suppose. Oh, brothers. I don't care for brothers. My elder brother won't die, and my younger brothers seem never to do anything else. Harry, my dear fellow, I'm not quite serious, but I can't help detesting my relations. I suppose it comes from the fact that we can't stand other people having the same faults as ourselves. I quite sympath- I quite sympathize with the rage of the English democracy against what they call the vices of the upper classes. They feel that drunkenness, stupidity, and immortality should be their own special property, and that if any one of us makes an ass of himself, he is poaching on their preserves. When poor Southwark got into the divorce court, their indignation was quite magnificent. And yet, I don't suppose that 10% of the lower orders live correctly. I don't agree with a single word that you have said. And what's more, Harry, I don't believe you do either. Lord Henry stroked his pointed brown beard and tapped the toe of his patent leather boot with a tasseled malacca. How English you are, Basil. If one puts forward an idea to a real Englishman, always a rash thing to do. He never dreams of considering whether the idea is right or wrong. The only thing he considers of any importance is whether one believes it oneself. Now, the value of an idea has nothing whatsoever to do with the sincerity of the man who expresses it. Indeed, the probabilities are that the more insincere the man is, the more purely intellectual will the idea be. As in that case, it will be not colored by either his wants, his desires, or his prejudices. However, I don't propose to discuss politics, sociology, or metaphysics with you. I like persons better than principles. Tell me more about Dorian Gray. How often do you see him? Every day. I couldn't be happy if I didn't see him every day. Of course, sometimes it's only for a few minutes. But a few minutes with somebody one worships means a great deal. But you don't really worship him? I do. How extraordinary. I thought you would never care for anything but your painting. But your art, I should say. Art sounds better, doesn't it? He is all my art to me now. I sometimes think, Harry, that there are only two eras of any importance in the history of the world. The first is the appearance of a new medium for art, and the second is the appearance of a new personality for art also. What the invention of oil painting was to the Venetians, the face of Antinous was to late Greek sculpture, and the face of Dorian Gray will someday be to me. It is not merely that I paint for him, from him, draw from him, model from him. Of course, I have done all that. He has stood as Paris in dainty armor, and as Adonis with huntsman's cloak and polished boar spear, crowned with heavy lotus blossoms. He has sat on the prow of Adrian's barge, looking into the green, turbid Nile. He has leaned over the still pool of the some Greek woodland, and seen in the water's silent server